Good morning. Yes, I'm Pastor Jackie, and you're not used to seeing me up here up front, but usually I'm in the cafe sitting at the computer talking to the folks that are watching this via live stream. So welcome. It's a pleasure to be up front here to share the word with you today. And I just want to say a special shout out to our friends that watch via live stream. I'm here today, so connect with each other, make sure you say hello to each other, and let us know that you are here and that. So wow. So today, we continue the story. We continue this mini-series that's centered on the Old Testament, the book of Ruth. And it's a story that took place 3,000 years ago. It's hard to imagine that, isn't it? 3,000 years ago. Pastor Susie started us off with this series by sharing where we find hope when we don't like our story, and yet knowing we can't go back. And Pastor Susie introduced us to three women that lived in the territory of Moab. We heard about Naomi, who was originally from Bethlehem, and her two daughter-in-laws, Orpah and Ruth, both who came from Moab. And we learned that the three women became widows, which meant there were no men in the family to provide and protect for them. And since there were no children involved, especially male children, it meant that any inheritance was effectively lost. For them, in that time, in that place, their future didn't look good at all. So Naomi encouraged her daughter-in-laws to go back. Go back to your home. Go back to your families. Go back to where you originally came from. Orpah did. She went back home. But Ruth didn't. Ruth decided to stay and take the journey with Naomi. And as we read through the book of Ruth, we don't hear any more from Orpah. Her story ends as she goes home. But you see, the story continues when Naomi, along with Ruth, start the journey home to Bethlehem, which makes Ruth really a foreigner in Naomi's homeland. So then we moved to the next week, and we had Pastor Bob. And Pastor Bob took us to the next part of Naomi and Ruth's journey. Pastor Bob talked about how God moves in our lives, and yet we don't realize it's God who's making those movements. Sometimes we just like to say, oh, it was just a coincidence. It just happened. But Ruth shows us proof, especially when we hear that she gleaned in a field close by and soon found out that field that she was gleaning from belonged to a relative of Naomi's. And that relative was Boaz. And after finding out that Ruth was Naomi's daughter-in-law, well, Boaz gave Ruth permission to glean. And that means really to gather the leftover grain that was after the harvest. But he also gave her a promise. And the promise would be that Ruth would be protected when she was out in the fields. So you see, it was through God's movement in this situation that led Ruth to the field that belonged to Boaz. Have you ever put your trust in someone you didn't know very well? Let me share more about that as we get into the chapter 3 of Ruth. Naomi, her mother-in-law, says to her, "My daughter, shouldn't I seek security for you so that things might go well for you? Now, isn't Boaz, whose young women you were with, our relative? Tonight he will be winnowing barley in the threshing floor. You should bathe, put on some perfume, wear nice clothes, and then go down to the threshing floor. Don't make yourself known, though," she says, to the man until he has finished eating and drinking. And when he lies down, notice the place where he is lying. Then go, uncover his feet and lie down, and he will tell you what to do. Ruth replied to her, "I'll do everything that you tell me." So when she went down to the threshing floor and she did everything just as her mother-in-law had ordered her to do, Boaz ate and drank, and he was in a good mood. And he went over to lie down from the edge of the grain pile. Then she quietly approached, uncovered his legs, and lay down. During the middle of the night, the man shuddered and turned over, and there was a woman lying at his feet. "Who are you?" he asked. And she replied, "I'm Ruth, your servant. Spread out your robe over your servant, because you are a redeemer." And he says, "May you be blessed by the Lord, my daughter. You have acted even more faithfully than you did at first. You haven't gone after rich or poor young men. And now, my daughter, don't be afraid. I'll do for you everything that you are asking. Indeed, my people, all who are at the gate, know that you are a woman of worth." Now, although it's certainly true that I'm a redeemer, there's a redeemer who is closer relative than I am. Stay the night. And in the morning, if he'll redeem you, good, let him redeem. But if he doesn't want to redeem you, then as the Lord lives, I myself will redeem you. Lie down until morning. So she lay at his feet until morning. Then she got up before one person could recognize another, for he had said, "No one should know that the woman came to the threshing floor." He said, "Bring the cloak that you have on and hold it out." And she held it out. And he measured out 6 measures of barley and placed it upon her. And then she went into town. She came to her mother-in-law, who said, "How are you, my darling, my daughter?" So Ruth told her everything the man had done for her. And she says, "He gave me these 6 measures of barley, for he said to me, 'Don't go away empty-handed to your mother-in-law.'" "Sit tight, my daughter," Naomi replied, "until you know how it turns out. The man won't rest until he resolves the matter today." The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You see, this message was really an important one for us really to pay attention to. And I say that because this passage helps us to see what happens when we all put our trust in God. And especially when we give it all to God. But that's the thing. You see, when I say we give it all to God, I mean that means we are giving up all our control to have God have full control of all the situations that we are going through. Now, the blessing in return, though, is when we turn everything over to God, it's knowing that the details are safeguarded by the one who can truly manage them. And I know it's a hard thing for many, for us to give it all to God and then just sit and wait. This week, I want to share with you the intersection of our action and of God's plan. You see, powerful things happen when we combine the two. And we get this cue on how and what it looks like from Naomi's actions. Right at the start of the chapter, Naomi gives a big move in finding a husband for Ruth. And even though the chapter is more about Ruth and Boaz, the chapter really is bookended by Naomi. You see, we find the first action in Ruth 3:1. Naomi, her mother-in-law, saying to her, "My daughter, shouldn't I seek security for you so that things might go well for you?" Naomi's setting the stage for us. And then the other end bookends happens at the very last verse in chapter 3. And this is 3:18. Naomi says, "Sit tight, my daughter." "Sit tight, my daughter," Naomi replied, "until you know how it turns out. The man won't rest until he resolves the matter today." And I say that Naomi bookends this chapter because she has 2 actions: move and wait. Move and wait. It's kind of like a dance a little bit. Move and wait. And it's really a rhythm that we can adopt ourselves. Move and wait. And I say that because a confident faith moves forward even when the outcome is unknown. You see, when Naomi put her plan into motion to find Ruth a husband, she had no idea how it was going to turn out. Because let's face it could have been kind of ugly and bad, especially for Ruth and Naomi. But you see, Naomi moved ahead anyways. She moved forward anyways. And it's when life strikes us down and we don't know what to do, when everything around us tells us to give up and stop trying, it's our faith that tells us, move anyways. It's telling us to put one foot in front of the other anyways. You see, faith tells us to take action anyways, even when we don't know the outcome. Faith is confident, and it's especially confident in knowing that God has our back. What a great feeling that is, right? Knowing that God has our back and knowing that God is going to come through. We don't know how. A lot of times we don't even know when that's going to happen. But we know God will always come through, especially when we put our trust in God. It helps us to move forward without fretting about the future or enjoying the present moment that we're living in. We can move forward and not knowing what is before us, but knowing that God already knows what's going to happen. God already knows what's before us. So let me ask you, how can we move forward in our faith? Well, first we need to know that a confident faith is comfortable in waiting for God to move. Let that sit a minute. A confident faith is comfortable in waiting for God to move. I know that sounds difficult, especially if you're one who hates to wait. See, I pride myself in saying and thinking I have this patience. I can stand in line at any store without no problem. And actually, I enjoy standing in line. I love to stand in line because I love to talk to the people that are in the line as well. You can learn so much about a person as you stand in line. I know I'm weird. I know it sounds weird, but I tell you, I really have learned a lot about people that I've met as I've been standing in line. But recently, though, I found that I'm really not as patient as I thought I was. You see, there's a situation that I've been encountering over and over and over these last few weeks. I find myself getting a little annoyed as I take the little side road to get to the stores. And that's the only area where the stores are really that I need to go to. You know, the grocery store. I got Meijer's, I've got Costco, I've got Home Depot, I've got, Menards, I've got all the restaurants. Everything's right there in the spot. But I could go, and I do go through the industrial road. But you see, as I'm driving along, I always have to, seems like lately, I always have to come to a complete stop. Because you see, there's this flock of geese that like to hang out on this industrial road. And it didn't bother me at first, and I thought it was kind of cute watching them cross the road, right? But everybody has to come to a complete stop. And it takes some time to make up their mind about coming across the road. Sometimes they stop and, have to peck at themselves, peck at each other, and then they make it across the road. So last Wednesday, I thought, you know what, I'm not going to take the side road because I've got a lot to do. I'm on a time schedule. I need to get to the store and get back home. So I take Middle Belt, right? That'll get me there no time. And maybe I just need to start taking Middle Belt. That is until I get to the spot where I need to turn into the store and we come to a complete stop. The geese. They decided that day it would be fun to cross Middle Belt. So they get in the line and they all start crossing, they all start walking, right? And then the last one, who's a little bit smaller than the rest of them, decides, you know what? I don't like this side of the road. I want to go back. So everybody's thinking, oh, good, they're done. And then they start to move. And that little one decides to run across and go back the other way. You can see frustration in people's arms are going up like, what's going on? What is going on? Now, I don't think it's the waiting for the geese that bother me so much. Though it has been really trying on my patience. And I've been talking about it a lot to several people, and I think they're tired about hearing the geese crossing the road, but something is going on with this. What is it? Is it really the geese? No, it's not the geese. It's that time of having to stop. That time feels like it's wasted. What is going on? I'm sitting here. I've got things to do. That time is wasted. So I've discovered, since I've been talking about it so much, that maybe I do get impatient with the geese. But I also get impatient when I have to wait for God. When I have to wait for God to make a move in my life. Like when I'm praying for an answer for something to happen in my life or an answer for a direction, what should I do, God? Where should I go? I want that answer right then and there so I know when I open my eyes that I can move, right? But it doesn't happen that way. Or when I'm praying how to help someone because I have a friend in need and really wants help, like, Jackie, pray for me, please. And I pray. And I wait. So as I'm preparing this message, it makes me wonder about Naomi. How was she feeling? Waiting for evidence that God was on the way. It's hard to wait. It's hard to stop, especially when you're in emotion. It's hard, especially when we want the answer now. But I've come to realize something, and that's time spent waiting on God is never wasted time. You see, when we pay attention to those moments that we're waiting, those are the moments that God talks to us. Those are the moments that God's saying, good, you're stopped. Breathe, now listen. Those are the moments that we need to take in and let God be God. Just like Naomi tells Ruth, sit still, my daughter, and wait. Because God's not going to rest until God sees through the matter. Move and wait. Move and wait. Move on the things we can change today. But wait for God to settle the rest. You see, there's a bigger story being written when we're comfortable waiting for God to move. Because our hope for today is this. A confident faith points us to the glory of God. Power of might and instead of our own. Let me read that again. A confident faith points us to the glory of God, power and might instead of our own. See, God's power and might reveal that Jesus died on the cross for us. So many times we forget about involving God. And we think it's our strength that gets us through the task, right? Just kind of like what Pastor Bob talked about last week. But have you ever told yourself, you're enough, you're whole, you're complete, hey, you're perfect? Have you ever told yourself that? Have you ever felt that before, standing in front of the mirror, trying to get yourself up and ready? And it's not that these statements are not true. You are whole, you are perfect, you are enough, because that's the way God sees you. That's the way God created you. God sees us that way because Jesus overcame the cross. You are enough because of Jesus. And when we live with the hard stories, it helps to give God the glory who gets us through those times, who gets us through those situations. And here's the good news. It's a relief to know that we are not the hero of our story. You can take your breath now. You are not the hero of your story. It's the same with like the book of Ruth. Naomi isn't the hero of this book. Boaz isn't the hero of this book. Even Ruth isn't the hero of this book. You see, God is the hero of the book of Ruth. And God is a hero for each and every one of our stories too. See, when the world sees a person of faith routinely placing their trust in the Lord, it will also see God's mercy, God's love, as God teaches us to live in this world with hope. So when you hear yourself saying those words, you need to remember that you are enough because of Jesus. You are whole, you are complete and perfect because of Jesus. And the goal for each of us is to make God the hero of each and every one of our stories here. And God is glorified when we say, you know what, Lord? I'm not enough without you, Jesus. But I trust you bring me through this. Our goal in moving forward is to bring glory to God as we move forward in our story. We also need to remember to wait and wait for God to show us what's next. Amen.